So I finished the Battlefield 6 campaign and I let myself marinate on it a little bit because I had some mixed feelings about it. But overall, I walked away thinking it was fine. I don't think it's nothing that's going to blow anyone away. I don't think it breaks any new ground. And I do think it is overshadowed a lot by especially Black Ops 6's campaign, which was actually pretty darn good because it had a lot of mission variation. However, Battlefield 6's campaign is pretty short. It can be completed in about 4 or 5 hours, and each level is not crazily different from the others. Now, I didn't really need that. I just wanted some good Battlefield action and a decent story to help, feed me along. And that is basically what I got. I will say it had some pretty good characters though, and it had some pretty good moments. Nothing in it was bad per se, but nothing really stood out either. There were some highlights, including, this scene on the Brooklyn Bridge, which was very explosive and very good. But I do also think back to hearing that, 3/4 of the way through Battlefield 6's development, they actually had to reboot and redo the entire campaign. And that kind of shows here, especially once you know. So, apologies to letting everyone know, but that is a thing that happened, and I do see the cracks in the mold here. But I do think it's a fun enough time, especially because when no one is getting this specifically for the campaign. We are all here for that multiplayer. However, I am one of those older players, the older Battlefield players that really does care about the single player story content. So I really want to sit here and talk about it. So during the campaign, you play as Sergeant Dylan Murphy and his squad, which consists of Gecko, the Huntress as they introduce her, Lopez, who is basically the engineer of the group, and a guy named Hax, who is a veteran who is kind of shepherding Dylan through all the things that are happening. So a lot of things happen in this, and you do play as another character or two here and there, but it is mostly revolving around this squad. And I did actually end up really liking these characters, even though they didn't really have any real time to shine, with the exception of Murphy and Gecko, who do get quite a bit more time to shine. And I do think Hax does get some time because he has a special relationship, I should say, with one of the antagonists in the game. However, I do hope we do see them in the future and have them more expanded on, because I do feel like there was some missed opportunity to really explore these characters, especially since a lot of the subtext and dialogue that happens during the game really points to a lot of things and points to a lot of the characters' motivations and what bothers them. Hell, even their political views, which kind of clash here and there when it comes to the in-universe president. And that was actually really cool, and I thought handled very well. So I do hope they continue on with these characters in the future, whether they're going to be doing DLC for this or not. I'm not really sure. But when it comes to the actual content and levels themselves, each one is mostly linear, with a couple of them having a little bit more openness to them. I think 80% of the levels here are pretty linear shooting gallery style levels, with some twists and turns and some really good set pieces, with 2 of them kind of standing out as more open, not super open as in some of the missions on Battlefield 1 or anything, but open enough to where it did feel like a kind of grand adventure. That goes doubly for the last mission. That one feels pretty darn open. And one thing I do think is a little weird though is there aren't as many vehicles in this campaign as I expected there to be, with it being a Battlefield game. And honestly, on the tank level, because there is a dedicated tank level, it wouldn't be a Battlefield game without one. I hate the default tank controls. It says it's not really recommended, but I do recommend everyone use the decoupling of the camera and like movement direction from your vehicle in your settings, because trying to drive the tank and while going like strafing and aiming 90 degrees to your left or right is damn near impossible, especially when you're trying to zoom in with the tank, and just feels awful until you decouple the camera from your movement. It just felt leagues better and I enjoyed it so much more. It was actively getting me killed, so keep that in mind when driving the vehicles in this. You're gonna really want to customize some of the controls, because some of the vehicle configurations and way you drive them, and this even extends to the multiplayer, is not very good. Now, I would like to talk about the presentation of this game, because I do think it looks pretty darn good, which is kind of surprising to some people, but to me not really, because to me I don't think you need ray tracing in a game, but this does not have it. And a lot of people are like, wait, why doesn't this have ray tracing? Like, it should. It's a contemporary, like, modern Battlefield game. Like, what's wrong with you? But I don't think it was really needed here. I think the lighting that they managed to pull off in this looks really dang good. And if anything recently has taught me that you don't need ray tracing to have a beautiful looking game, you just look right over at Death Stranding 2. Granted, the artists over there at Kojima Productions are madmen, but even so, here over at DICE and EA, they really managed to make this look really darn good. And there's only some minor things here and there that I really had to complain about. I played this on the PS5 Pro, and I played it in balanced mode, which is, the highest graphical setting. And for the most part, it really stayed true and steady at that 60 FPS target, with very few hitches or anything to be seen. However, I did notice a few things that might bug some players, like some of the cutscenes being capped at 30 frames per second, which is really, really jarring when you are playing this buttery smooth gameplay and then you transition to a cutscene that hasn't really changed your perspective. You're still in the same spot and perspective of your character, but all of a sudden it's in 30 frames per second, and so it in that moment looks super jittery, but you can tell the visual fidelity is much higher, that they wanted to really push that. So no doubt it's to just prevent some hardcore frame drops when trying to get that 60 FPS target. So it's not too bad. And there is some jank here and there. There is some glitches that I ran into, some trigger happy soldiers that were wanting to fire off their weapons constantly, even in the middle of cutscenes and things like that. Some pathing issues with some of the soldiers, and some kind of jitteriness to some of the NPC movement here and there. But overall, I think it's a pretty polished experience, and I do think it is a worthwhile thing to play through. A lot of people are just going to jump into the multiplayer, but go ahead and give this campaign a try. It won't even be that long, and I think you'll really enjoy it. I noticed that IGN gave this like a 5 or something, and I do think that is kind of criminal. I think it's like a 7. I think it is good. I think it could have been a lot better had it had more time to cook, probably. But overall, I do think it's a really good addition to the pantheon of Battlefield campaigns. Nowhere near on the level of Bad Company or Bad Company 2, but it is very good. And honestly, shooting for Bad Company 2 is a really high bar. Those are some 10 out of 10 campaigns for me. They were great. So, anyway, on Battlefield 6, how is everyone else feeling about this? At least the campaign anyway. That's what this video is about. I will have another video coming out about the multiplayer, because I do want to talk about that, because I have been having an absolute blast playing the multiplayer. How have you guys been doing? How is the campaign treated you if you play it? And hell, give me your opinions on the multiplayer. Is it as good as you thought it was going to be after playing the beta? For me, I'm having a lot more fun than I even did in the beta. But anyway, that's all for this video. Subscribe if you want to hear more from me and see my thoughts on the multiplayer of Battlefield 6 here in the near future. Spoilers, it's freaking great. Like this video if you really enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Peace.